Welcome back, Pete. We are in for another episode of Two Sides of the Table.
And it's awesome to be back on the other side of the table with you.
What have you been up to since we recorded last?
Well, last night was actually a Kaseya event, so the Kaseya Connect in Brisbane. And as we said in the last episode, we're definitely hitting conference season. So it was wonderful to catch up with a number of MSPs and also drag the orange jacket out again and get up on stage and talk about all things digital team.
And the shoes as well, I'm assuming.
The orange shoes and the orange underpants as well for those that need the picture.
Okay, great. Well, we didn't need to know that, but thank you for sharing. All right. Well, today we are joined by Paul Mangano as our second guest on Two Sides of the Table. Paul is Managing Director and Co-founder of Mangano IT, which is a Brisbane-based MSP that turns 20 years old this year, so 2 decades. He runs the business alongside his brother Robert. Paul and Rob left solid corporate careers in 2005 to launch the business that was built on mutual trust and bold ambition. So known as the glass half full guy in the best possible way, Paul leaned on instinct for years before realising that strategy, structure and knowing your numbers weren't just important, they were everything. Fast forward to today, under his leadership, Mangano IT has matured into a next-gen MSP combining AI, automation, and intelligent workflows to transform repetitive tasks into smart policy-driven processes. Paul's vision is big but grounded. Build a sustainable business based on relationships and resilience, not ego, flash, or chasing the next big name. Welcome to Two Sides of the Table, Paul.
Wow, what an intro. I think all my content's done. Thank you very much for the invite, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Fabulous. Well, thanks for joining us. So, obligatory question. What have you been listening to, watching, reading over the last couple of months?
I like to, mix it up a little bit. I like listening to simple things like Australian Financial Review podcasts. I often listen to that every Friday morning as I'm heading to my run. I think I find that to get information that's not always tech-driven is, I guess, a good way to stay well-rounded.
I agree. All right. So for those people who don't know who Mangano IT is, describe the business that it is today and how it's changed over the last 20 years. Are we having a birthday party this year?
Of course we're having a birthday party. We'll,
Any excuse for a party.
Absolutely, yeah, love a party. So Mangano IT, 20 years on. I think the important thing is that as any business, as most businesses, we need to evolve, and we have very much evolved over those 20 years. We would look nothing like we did 20 years ago, and I suspect if we looked anything like it, we probably wouldn't be around. So if I look historically at our journey, I think we're at the beginning of the second big evolution of our business. Yeah. And I think, or arguably even the third. I think the first is sort of early days where it's not so much a technology shift, it's more just a maturity in a business where you move from that unconsciously incompetent position to sort of just at least half knowing what you're doing, which is, I'd say, sort of stage one. Stage two for us is probably that shift from on-prem environment or sort of break-fix environment to managed or even cloud. Those sort of two sort of mostly aligned for us. And I think now we're at that third evolution of our business, which is clearly the AI shift. And of course, security played a big part, through that those last two evolutionary stages there as well. So.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's definitely, we'll dive into the AI stuff more, but it's definitely something that we're hearing a lot of on the podcast. So the business is 20 years old. That's a pretty big achievement, particularly in this industry.
Yeah.
What's been your biggest challenge in building the business or keeping it running over that evolution that you've seen?
It's definitely making sure that we reflect and grow and change, and that means often it's the people in our business that we have at one stage aren't always the right people to take us to that next stage. So it's important that we don't become complacent with what we're doing, and that's with respect to the people in our team, the offerings that we offer our customers, and the engagements that we have with our vendors and partners. So you need to constantly be looking at are we what's best in class or best in breed, and are we actually serving our market appropriately, and making sure that we're doing that profitably and sustainably all along the way.
When Carla asked what the biggest challenge was, I thought you were going to say working with Rob, because I think you're definitely in a unique situation. I think they say don't work with pets, children, or relatives, basically.
Absolutely.
And tell us a little bit about that dynamic there, because working with your brother is certainly not a common scenario in the MSP space.
No. Look, and I'd like to think we do it well, and we do it well because we know our complementary skill sets. I guess we are absolutely different people, and anyone who's met us can attest to that quite quickly. So Rob is much more operational, and he would say gets things done, which is probably fair. Whereas I focus more on the sales and strategy side, and so we have complementary skills.
So what you're trying to say is you're the big picture person and he's the one that needs to take those big picture ideas and execute on them.
I wasn't going to say it, but I come up with the dreams and he has to make them happen. Yes, so absolutely.
The harebrained ideas.
Yeah, that's right. And they don't always work, and sometimes he'll just sit and listen and look at me and wait for me to stop, and then just let me go away, and then come back and go, we can do that. No, mate, we can't do that. That's crazy. So, and it is just knowing we're staying in our lane. Like, that's also very important. Like, I'm not going to try and do the things that Rob does well, and Rob has no interest in trying to do the things that I'm I have skills in. So for that reason, it sort of works.
Yeah, and I think that's in any organisation, finding the strengths and being able to play to those strengths. And many people know that I actually work with my wife in digital team, and that's even worse than working with your brother. But once again, I know where her superpower is, and she knows where my superpower is as well, which is not much, trust me.
Staying in your lane is definitely important, right?
Super important.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how different is the business from what you envisioned it would be back in 2005? Because I bet you didn't think it would be one of the most well-known, well-respected MSPs in the city.
Very kind words, but honestly, I think we had no idea what it was going to look like is the reality, like genuinely no idea. And I suppose that goes back to, entrepreneurs in general don't need that reassurance of what it's going to look like, and I'm happy to go and have a go. And I think that's the excitement of the journey, right? I mean, it's about what we could build. So both, as you described, Carla, Rob and I had come from sort of larger corporate, government sort of worlds, which is the complete opposite of where we are now. So it's about the possibility of what might be, and being willing to back yourself and have a go. And so where did we get to, or what did I think it was going to look like? Well, sort of not just a 9-to-5 job is about all we knew. But where it has landed is generally exciting. And I think what keeps it exciting is that evolution that we spoke of, and what we'll be doing tomorrow will not be the same as what we did yesterday, and that's great, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I had this conversation with my brother earlier in the week, funnily enough, talking about siblings. It's, I was having one of those days where I was like, I'm just sick of being a business owner. Like, there's so much responsibility, and which I think every entrepreneur goes through at least, for me, it's probably once a month, but like, you just have those days. And he goes, oh, well, then don't. I was like, well, what do you mean? I can't give it up. Like, that's silly. It's almost like this drive to create something. Like, you're constantly motivated by that.
And look, I love that. And I it's probably worth calling out for me, and I'm sure it's the same for most, that having a very supportive family is really key. So for my wife, Michelle, to, who does so much each and every day to look after effectively the family as a whole, because that enables me to do what I do. And you really can't do it without that support at home. So it is really important and often unspoken. So that's, I think it's got to be acknowledged, and it often is not. But that thing about sort of being always on, I just you're just used to that. Like, that's what I do. Like, and I appreciate that sometimes there's less than healthy habits that we create as entrepreneurs, but that's also, if it's not a struggle or it's not a challenge for me, to sort of have that to always be on. So that, I enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of focus today, especially around mental health, about that always on and how do you compartmentalise thing. But I think the reality is, and we don't often talk about it, is in order to succeed, often you've got to work really hard.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that success comes from being able to then dig in and work those long hours and really do what needs to get done.
I think that's a really good call out. It's about that consistency, right? Like you have to roll yourself out of bed every morning and get it done. Have you had times where you've I'm out, like?
Look, that happens. Yeah, there's ebbs and flow, right? And that's part of what we do. But you get to pick yourself up when you have a down day. That is, I suppose, heading back to the discussion around having Rob or a partner, or whether it's a sibling or not, having that business partner where you can go, I'm not having the best day. This is the challenge. That's helpful to sort of share those things, and particularly in my case where I've got my brother, that trusted person. Like, yeah, mate, you'll be right. Pick yourself up, on you go, on your way, and that's okay. So that's there's a support network that's there for us in different ways, right?
Yeah,
because I think the thing to admit is really entrepreneurship is actually like a roller coaster. You're on the top of the world one day, and then by the afternoon you could be at the bottom of the world because something's happened, a customer's complained, you've had a resignation, all sorts of things, and you ride this sort of wave of up and down and up and down. And I think the overlay also with being in a TSP environment is, I often describe being in a TSP is every day is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And the one thing that's consistent is that you've got to deal with it. Like, I absolutely believe that the worst decision is no decision. You need to look at what's in front of you, prioritise the issues that are in front of you, and deal with them. Move on to the next one. Don't necessarily dwell on something for too long. It's okay. You will not get everything right, but that's human nature. It's not always gonna work out the way you want.
That's it.
But sitting on something for too long, not making a decision, it's absolutely worse than I'm picking a bad one, I guess. Yeah, and I think that's where the Nike methodology comes in. Just do it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I think definitely one of the things that I noticed when I was working with Pete at MOQ was you would make a decision and then you would deal with the consequences of that decision regardless of what it was. But rather than sitting on that topic for so long, it was just make a decision and we can go down that path. Like, I think it is something that I think entrepreneurs, and especially entrepreneurs in the early stages of business, you have to make decisions really quickly.
Yep. Fail fast.
Yeah, that's it, but fail forward.
Yep.
All right, so the MSP game has probably changed a lot in the last 20 years, and you've seen, like you mentioned before, you touched on, the move from on-prem to cloud, and now we're seeing the AI revolution, let's call it. What do you see happening over the next 5 years?
Geez, that's an easy one, isn't it? I think not only our industry, but productivity in general in the marketplace is absolutely up for an incredible shift. And this is another classic example where we need to be moving with the market. So there's a couple of layers to this. There's how us as TSPs or MSPs are using AI and technology within our own businesses. And obviously the usual driver there is to improve efficiency and try to deliver scale with potentially the same number of people, for example. And then, of course, there's what are we doing for our customers? Our customers are all asking these questions. So do we have an offering? Are we partnering with somebody? How are we helping their businesses be more productive and profitable through the use of AI offerings that we might have in market?
Yeah. And I think the change is really, and it's been a shift that's happening probably over the last decade, is IT is no longer an enterprise product, it's a consumer product. So what someone can access in their home and their personal life is often better than what they can access in the corporate world. And especially as the new generation comes through, there's almost the expectation, well, I can go and get Google Maps, pop that in ChatGPT and then generate a video. Why can't I just do this in my workplace? And the ability to be able to keep up and be able to deliver solutions that interface with that challenging landscape from customers.
And I absolutely think it is a generational shift as well. If we look at the teams that we have in our organisations, I speak with our team and talk about the fact that your job's not necessarily going to be taken by AI quite yet, but your job will likely be taken by somebody using AI. I mean, we all as individuals and individual contributors in an organisation need to utilise these tools that improve our own efficiencies, because that's what will make a difference at scale.
And so how are you doing that in your own organisation? Like how are you starting to adopt AI and really make those tools part of the day-to-day culture of the workplace?
Yeah, we've got a couple of great examples there. And I think that in our case, at least, there's a combination of AI and hyper-automation, which is quite relevant in the MSP space. So we're using like an AI front end that integrates into our customers' teams, so to allow our customers to speak with what we refer to as MIA, which is Mangano IT Assist. And we configure MIA to be helpful and but still controlled and contained, because people don't want to talk to a bot forever. So we sort of let MIA gather or ask about 3 questions before we redirect to our team, for example. So, and by that we want to have enough information out of that request to then go to our frontline team, and then we're enabling our frontline team to deliver quickly and efficiently without even having technical systems access. So we've developed 50-something bots that will then allow our frontline people to take the information that's sort of been gathered, either whether it was a phone call or whether it was through MIA, and understand that request, pop it into a form that will then go off and execute that repeatable task. And the real differentiator there is that task is done really well and really consistently and is really well documented, which is perhaps a change from when you have more technically minded people who write a note that says done. Right, so not so helpful. But so yeah, by using these tools and these automations, we're able to get some efficiencies there. And importantly, we are a customer focused business. The customer experience out of that that sort of those tool sets is much better than we've been able to deliver without them.
And I think you touch on a really interesting point, and that's the hyper-personalisation as well, is being able to deliver a personal experience to that individual, because you're able to then identify more about them and more about the particular challenges. Have you had so many really good use cases or case studies where that's worked really, really well?
I'd even say in the way that we created some of our workflows or our automations is that they do need to be specific for a certain organisation, because one customer might have an on-prem environment or a hybrid environment, another customer might be all in cloud. But we didn't want to rewrite these bots and automations for each individual customer, because then effectively you're almost just scripting per customer, which isn't really helpful at scale. So when we talk about that personalisation, we've developed our system so that it can interrogate, understand that customer, understands the environment that customer is using, and then the workflow is split and do different tasks to then come back around again. So we're able to use those workflows for any customer and any new customer that comes along, which is the sort of example that delivers us the scale that we need. It's very different in mindset to writing a script for an individual customer. So being able to provide that customization that you're talking about, but still doing it in a way that is repeatable, that you don't have to recreate every time you get a new customer, is one of our differentiators.
Yeah, and look, you sound really far advanced with where you're at, and I know that this is always a continual journey and a continual process. And having talked to a number of MSPs at IT Nation in Sydney last week, almost every second question is, how do we get started with automation? So for our listeners that might be thinking, wow, that sounds amazing, what do you think the first steps for them are on that journey to then start to introduce that efficiency gains that you've seen?
Yeah, I think you need to take a step back and have a look at your own data in your own ticketing tool. So what's causing the most noise in your organisation or for your customers? So that if you're going to go and spend all this time and effort in creating a solve, then we want to be solving the problem that's going to return the best return for us, I guess. So, and often it's, although every MSP is unique and special and have their own sort of secret sauce, there is a lot of commonality. So you might find that on user onboarding and user offboarding are some high-hitting ticket counts that are probably might be the kind of place you want to start. So you want to deliver the automation for the thing where you're going to get the best bang for buck.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think I like the approach that, go where you're actually going to get the best benefit. But I think the other thing that that then starts to do is that classic Pareto principle is that, 80% of your challenges are probably coming from 20% of your tickets. But then it becomes a game of whack-a-mole because you go and solve that, something else pops up, we knock that down, then something else pops back up again.
I would also say it's important to not just sort of tweak what you've already done. A lot of providers are already using some sort of automation or scripting or coding to deliver at scale, but it does need to have a bit of a different mindset, and we need to go back to the customer and what does the customer experience look and feel like, and how do we improve that? Now, every provider knows that. You get the ticket that comes in late Friday afternoon that says Fred's going to start work Monday morning. That's not going to change. Our customers usually either don't even know themselves or HR's just told them. So we sort of think about those kind of problems. Go, well, how do we fix that? So we use Employment Hero in our organisation, for example, and then there's plenty of other organisations that do. So we're even going back to the HR platform, and we're developing automations from the HR platform. So when HR in our customers' organisation creates a new user, that's where our workflow begins. So we have automations into that create tickets for users, and so when that user is created in Employment Hero, for example, we know what department they're going to be in, we know what their name, their email, their phone number, all of those details, and obviously we gather enough information to be able to create an IT user as well. So it's about. That's an example of looking beyond just the tech and looking more holistically at how do we fix the customer's problem.
Yeah, it's about the customer experience.
100%.
Yeah, and it sounds like one of the things that you're doing differently, and obviously maybe part of your secret sauce, is getting closer to the business. So talking to those people in HR and operations and other parts of the organisation to really understand what their challenges are and how you can solve them.
Yeah, I think we all understand now that IT isn't really just the IT department as it may have been historically, and every department has their own IT requirements and sometimes shadow IT, which is why it's important that we, as that trusted provider, that term I probably not particularly fond of, but it's a real thing, but we do need to understand all facets of the business and what are each department doing and how can we help them. So that's it's a great point, Peter, and I think it's really important to understand that you take the time to understand the business holistically, because the way we talk to speak with our customers is that our job is an enabler. So our job is to support our customers' business outcomes, and how do we do that? It's simply through the use of technology. Whereas the external accountant will do that through finance support and whatever. There's a whole number of support people that any organisation will use. As technology providers, we just need to understand that we are just one of many, and we need to understand the business holistically and help our customers get to where they're trying to get to.
Yeah, I think, and that's also a great strategy in becoming a lot more sticky with your customers as well, is that embedment. So, how do you get to know the people in those departments? It makes that a lot harder for you to be,
Yeah, and it is, as much as we talk about the hyper-automation and AI, there is always still a human element to what we do. We are a services business. Services business means that we need to talk to our customers. When there's a problem, we need to talk to our customers. So if any party is in any sort of engagement, I suspect, pulling out a contract to look at who should be doing what, you've sort of missed the boat already, right? So those sort of things are often resolved through good, clear, transparent communication. Understanding what each other have, what our expectations are of each other, and doing our very best to deliver those outcomes. So as much as we love tech,
yeah,
and this is a challenge for a lot of technically minded people, they don't often like speaking with the other humans. So we need to always coach our people to go and talk to the customer, go and understand what's going on in their business, because you'll always get a better outcome by having a conversation with another person.
I saw a great post on LinkedIn. I can't remember who posted it the other day, but it was basically saying that if your customer is calling you, you've missed the boat. Like, you need to be picking up the phone and calling them, because you should have recognised there was a problem before they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're never calling to say, I hope you're having a great day today.
That's
they're calling
right.
because they've got a problem,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's, again, goes back to the proactive monitoring and management of an environment. And you do want to be, like, I think there's a lot of people that talk about this proactive engagement, but maybe don't necessarily deliver it as much, and that can be a result of too much of a workload. I mean, no, we know we've been there in the past. You've got such a ticket workload that it becomes difficult to be genuinely proactive. So it's through the use of this hyper automation and AI and these other tools that allow us to scale and deliver consistency. That does free up our time to go and be more strategic, more proactive, and that's what our customers are wanting. So it's kind of one of the main drivers to go and put the effort in to deliver these things so that you can really focus on back to the customer's requirements again. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the really interesting thing is that in this world of being able to do more with less, it changes what that engagement looks like, and it changes, how that construct of the day looks like. The ability now to get closer to customers, to be able to spend more time, whether that's talking to them or whether that's actually taking them to lunch or building that engagement. Because the reality is people buy from people, and those relationships are so key. But I also think in an automation world, people crave that human relationship. They don't just want to be on a bot or doing something. They actually want to start to crave, and especially in a post-pandemic world as well.
And we're actually quite intentional about an engagement with a new customer, about letting them know that we have all of these modern methods of engagement, but you can still just pick up the phone and talk to us. I don't think at this point, at least for us, and it's the way that we've chosen to deliver these services is we're not looking to replace that human connection, because I think you're sort of missing a major point as you highlight, Peter. So making sure that we have the traditional ways of engagement along with these more modern ways, because arguably it's also generational depending on the customer base that you're serving. I'm going to suggest the younger people are much more inclined to use bots and chat agents and so on. And you might have people similar to my age who would just love to pick up the phone and say, hey, this is broken, can you sort it out for me? Yes, one should not be at the expense of another.
It's really dependent customer to customer, isn't it? How
Absolutely.
They want to engage. So can we just slightly shift the focus for a minute? Last week, you were obviously up on stage at IT Nation talking about your hyper automation journey. One of the key points that you raised was that as a business, but also as a team, we actually need to change. And you sort of touched on it before with your job's not going to be taken by AI, but it's going to be, taken by someone who can use it really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you doing within your business at the moment to sort of prepare your team for that?
Yeah, so we actually had this discussion at our all hands this week. One of the questions from the team was like, okay, same conversations obviously that we're having internally as well. And I think a common question is, how are we going to coach and train and educate our new and upcoming talent if all they're getting to do is just, use the bots and, fill in some forms and click go?
True.
So the way that we're sort of dealing with that is we're making sure that across our service team that it's a bit of old school, basic sort of fundamental stuff where we're seating a senior resource next to a junior resource and someone, and making sure that we're mixing up the teams as far as skill sets go. We're making sure that there's less of this concept of level 1, 2, 3 in a service desk, which is pretty common. We're really looking at, we're a single team, and ultimately we're there to deliver an outcome for our customers. And the same fundamental principles still apply, I believe. So although even before the bots, as it were, a level 1 would still only be allowed to do arguably level 1 tasks, and they would learn how to do them well. They would be consciously competent of what they're doing, and they know how to do that well. And then naturally you expand upon that and you start doing level 2 work, for example. But the same thing still applies. So early days, you'll just do, on the desk, you need to understand what those bots are doing. So it's a matter of not just using them, it's understanding what they're doing. And then you're learning by, from speaking to the person next to you, hey, look, the bot's not going to, cut it for this task. Hey, what do I do now? And so it's a little bit of that. So we don't ever want to have our team just, filling in the form and hitting enter. Right? That's not conducive to learning. So they will always get that opportunity when there is something sort of out of scope of the bot that they need to have a look at. And that's where being next to a more experienced person that can say, yeah, okay, have a go at this now. There's still that natural learning path by being in a team, being in an office. That opens up another whole can of worms, Kayla, about having, being seated next to the person Some of those things, although they can be done digitally, just don't always have the same effect as some real life, old school office.
Yeah, I think the osmosis that you get just being next to someone and listening to them and being able to do that. And I think you touch on an interesting point. Like, I think, all of us around the room are, at a certain age, and, some of us are older and some of us
Kayla's
are
been a bit offended by that, Peter, actually. But
some of us are older and some of us are younger. But, as the generations change, I remember when I first entered IT, most of that work was done through the CLI, so the command line interface. Like when I needed to work with DNS, I actually needed to know DNS in order to make that work. I remember doing octet tables and all of those types of things back in the day. And, you now start to then add technology layers over the top of that, and some of those fundamentals then get lost along the way.
And DNS is a great example because you do need to understand how that is working, how it functions. You need to know what's going to happen if I make a change to that DNS table, for example. So having that fundamental understanding of what either you're doing or what a platform or a bot or an automation is doing is still critical to understanding or being able to fault find if something goes wrong. Yeah. And I might say that also when you're creating automations and AI, that's all the more reason to make sure that everything is documented really well. You have this opportunity through code so that anything that happens through automation should be the best example of documentation that you've ever done. And that's certainly what we've chosen to do, because if something is run, then what happened? Who did what? And how do we undo that? You still can't, and if I sort of give me a little bit of leeway here, but if you use an example where if you do get a request to finish up a user, and for whatever reason in a sizable organisation, it can happen that the wrong name ends up on your ticket, and you go and exit a user, then it's a bit sad when that happens to be the wrong person that was exited. It's a thing. It's happened before. So if we're using automation and we're documenting super clearly exactly every step that was taken in the exit of that user, well then what we've done is been able to grab that same documentation and basically feed it back into the bot in reverse and create that same user back with all of those parameters so that that user once again reappears exactly the way they were. So we've thought about those sort of things. Well, what could go wrong when we're using this? What if somebody puts in the wrong name? What if there's, two, Kate Joneses in two different organisations? How's that work? Are we getting the right customer? Like, there's a lot of detail that you do need to think about.
And I think the other thing with the documentation too is I think it's one of those things that we always have good intention to do, but we just get busy. But if you start to look at where some of the automation, like with IT glue and things like that, that documentation is key because all of the bots actually rely on having that documentation in order to be effective.
And I'd extend upon that and say, like configuration item hygiene, for example, the data that you're relying on in this modern sort of hyper automation AI world is critical. You cannot do, or certainly in our case, we couldn't do half the things that we were doing unless our data hygiene was great. I mean, we've been focusing on the creation of great configuration items or CIs for years, and now like this is that time where that's actually coming to fruition, and there's value in that now. So if that hasn't been done in the past, well, they're the sort of things that will make using these tools a little harder than maybe they should be.
Yeah, and it's the old garbage in, garbage out.
100%.
Same with other departments, right? Like we're talking about this with marketing,
Yeah,
we talk about this with HR, like the data needs to be good. All right, so in your intro, I sort of alluded to the fact that, you operated the business in the early days sort of on your instinct and then, very quickly learned that, strategy, looking at the numbers is really important. And you've been involved in, several peer groups over the years. Why is that so important, Paul? And what have you learned through that process and been involved in those peer groups?
Look, I have got a lot of time and respect for peer groups, regardless of the flavour. It's sort of less relevant to me. But so for Robert and I, we have been in peer groups for, I think, 12 or 13 years now, if not longer. And joining a peer group was actually probably the single biggest differentiator or that put us on the right track. Again, if we go back to that term of unconsciously incompetent, we were that for quite a long time. You don't know what you don't know, right? So joining a peer group, talking to others that are either further along their journey than where you are, having the ability to benchmark yourself against your peers, that's really, really powerful information. So for us, that was the single biggest turning point where you have the opportunity to have some self-reflection and go, oh wow, I mean, I'm not as good as I think I might be, and there's lots to learn there. The other thing I would say there is we talk about learning tax at Mangano IT, the tax you pay by the things you learn from or have made mistakes from. And a peer group is a great place to learn from others. So why make the same mistakes that others already have? Like, listen to these guys and girls that have done it before, and try to avoid those pitfalls. Obviously, we're all on our own journey. It's important to consider who you're listening to. So what size is their organisation? Is there an alignment between what you do and what they do? Do they have a similar customer base or not? So what works in one business doesn't always work in another. But it's absolutely, there's a lot of foundational stuff that is very common. So yeah, absolutely, the peer groups is the answer, I think, and that's why they're so important, because you've got this opportunity to learn from like-minded, open-minded people.
And also, we talk about this quite a lot, is the fact that, every problem that you have, someone else has either gone through it or is going through it, and they can usually help you through those things.
And even in the selection of tool sets, that, I mean, as every MSP, TSP will tell you, there's a million tools out there, or services out there even. So it's speaking to those peers that have either already tried something that you're thinking about, or whether it be a positive feedback or not. All feedback's great feedback. And again, just considering who you're hearing that from and how that relates to you. And we've done that plenty of times. Like, that's a great example. That's really powerful. And that how provider A delivers it versus provider B delivering it, well, then that's that little bit of secret sauce or magic that you can put into it yourself. But it's super powerful.
Yeah, and I think the reality is everyone's going through the same challenges at some time, and just having that forum, sort of, we spoke about having a family to be able to lean on and talk on, but also industry peers as well, is because no one really knows what you're going through other than another MSP. So
absolutely,
the challenge of trying to collect outstanding bills, the challenge of a team member leaving, the challenge of trying to acquire new customers, and it's being able to then build that body of knowledge. And I think one of the amazing things about IT businesses is how willing they are to share. And sometimes I think there's a little bit of afraid to ask the question. And even last night, like, I saw that even not in a peer group, you could see, oh, how are you solving this? What are you doing with that? And that ability to build that knowledge and really rise all the boats in the harbour.
I absolutely believe that you are much better off being a little bit vulnerable, because you get the best return, right? So, if you show up and go, my stuff's awesome, I don't have any problems, well, then what are you doing there? You're not actually there with an open mind. You're not actually there to learn. So don't waste your time, right? So if you're going to a peer group, you have to be willing to expose some of your weaknesses and vulnerabilities, because they're the parts that you need help and support in. So if you're not going to actually share the problem properly, well, you're not going to get the best answers back either. So that's why that vulnerability is important.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So if you met someone, and I'm sure you've met plenty of people who are starting an MSP or some sort of, technology-related business, obviously having 20 years of experience behind you now, what's your biggest pieces of advice that you would give to someone starting out today?
Well, it's definitely all different, and I think there's genuinely a much lower barrier to entry, I'd suggest. We are clearly in a digital age, and so foundational systems are quite important. Like, even if we go back to basics, like, make sure you can bill. Like, honestly, it is. It sounds so simple, but unless you can actually bill and bill well, and that means capturing all of your time, that means billing appropriately in line with an agreement should you have one. Like, they're foundational things that can break you early on if you don't get right. So having the ability to bill, having a sales engine is also super important. We're still working on that. It feels like we're working on that forever, and I know I've got plenty of work to do still, because you need customers to sell to. That's the reality, and you've got to always find new customers. That's how you grow. As much as we all like to do a great job in keeping our customers, there will always be some level of natural attrition. So you need to consider both the what we'd say account management or farming aspect of making sure we keep our existing customers happy versus so the acquisition of new or hunting and finding new customers all the time. So having that's the sales part, I guess, or the growing. So, and of course, you need to also understand that as you grow and you go through different phases of the business, you get everything working right at a certain size and everything's great. But every system will have entropy, which means that over time, if we do nothing with it, that system will decay, and then we have problems again. So we need to make sure we're constantly assessing where we are, and again, benchmarking are great ways to do that, talking to peers, understanding what's in market. So you need to keep developing and evolving our businesses. So what works today won't necessarily work tomorrow, and you need to stay on top of that.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Paul. This has been a really insightful conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. And if people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn or email, which is at paul.mangano@manganoit.com.au.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed it. And thank you, Pete, for being on the other side of the table to me.
And Carla, once again, great to be on the other side of the table. And Paul, what an amazing journey and a huge success. And looking forward to that invite to the 20th celebration.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.